Alright, today I'm reviewing the Solar A1.6. This is a re-review because I did a review like a year or so ago, but this is my guitar. I bought it. I'm not sponsored by Solar, but I have enjoyed my experience with it, so I'd like to share that with you today. I'm not some kind of guitar virtuoso or anything. I'm doing the casual online music thing. I'm just some guy who clearly loves guitars, as you can see in the background. But let's get started. Be sure to use the timestamps to find what you're looking for. So first of all, the looks of the guitar. What do I think of the looks after all this time? Well, I'm still a fan. I'm a fan of how metal it is. It's got the pointy cutaways. It's got the reverse headstock. It's got the flame maple veneer. I'm still a fan of all these things. And this guitar has gotten compliments. I've taken it to various private events, house parties, etc. And it does get compliments. Moving on though to more importantly, how the guitar has held up. And I'm happy to say the electronics, the components have held up. They do all still work. There's no problems, there's no issues. The switch feels as good as it did basically on day one. The tone knob hasn't come loose or anything, it stays in place. The wiring on the pickups is still intact. No pickups have cut out or anything. So while the wiring and shielding, because these are the in-house stock pickups, it wasn't top shelf, it wasn't top notch, but it wasn't terrible, it wasn't bad, it was usable. And it has stayed usable. It hasn't gotten worse, it hasn't broken. Also, the locking tuners still work just fine too. They're the Solar brand locking tuners, so you might be wondering about those, and I'm happy to say they work perfectly fine still. I do want to talk about the finish, how the finish has held up, especially on the back of the neck, because it does have that satin, that matte finish. It's not just raw wood. And so far, it still feels pretty fast. It hasn't gotten sticky. It has gotten played in some, and you can tell that it's no longer dry, that the finger oil has gotten into it, but it doesn't stick, not like a gloss neck. So you're still able to play plenty fast on this neck just fine. I have noticed on the forearm cutaway, it is a bit stickier for whatever reason. Maybe when I'm playing it and I start to sweat and stuff, there's more sweat coming from the forearm. That could be a possible reason, but it is a bit more worn in here. It does feel a bit stickier there, but it doesn't feel so bad on the neck. It feels plenty fast. Will this change over time? Maybe, but for now it's held up for the past few years, so you can do with that information as you may. And speaking of playing the fretboard, I'll show you some close-ups of the fretboard, but it hasn't cracked. Actually, none of my Solars have cracked. I do have to set them up when I receive them. That means the humidity, the temperature, the atmospheric conditions here are probably different than both the factory and the warehouse that they're made and stored in. What I do is as soon as I get it, I let it acclimate to the climate for like half a day or so, just so the neck will take on whatever shape it will. I take off the strings, I condition the fretboard, and I string it and set it up to what I want it to be. So in this case, it's 10s and in drop C. But the fretboards haven't cracked. So let me share what I've used this guitar on. I used to play live in various conditions a while ago. I don't do that these days. As I mentioned, I'm doing the online music thing. So first and foremost, I do use this to pick up and practice. It's always going to be in tune, thanks to the Evertune. I'll talk about that soon. But because the neck feels pretty good too, amazing all-around guitar. I've also used it at private events and house parties, just playing around for multiple hours, and it's held up just fine, stays in tune, sounds great. And finally, and primarily, I have used it in recording songs. The most notable example of this is my cover of The Dark World. That is on Spotify, by the way, and all streaming services. But what's notable about that is that there's a lot of guitar layers, a lot of lead lines and rhythms. They're all stacked on top of each other. And one of the strengths of this guitar is that it's really good at layering. Something about how the pickups are voiced and everything. It doesn't step on its own toes. And so because of that, in my most heavily layered song, I did reach for this guitar. Since we're talking about sound, let's get more in depth into that. I can happily say that this guitar does fill the roles of everything you need it to do. If you're buying a guitar like this, that looks like this, it does fit really well in a mix, especially if there's a lot of guitars in it. So if you like layering a bunch of stuff, this is definitely a great pick. That's probably because it has a sort of scooped sound. It's like flat, hard to quantify. I just know that it works. I haven't really analyzed it too heavily. I think what it is that some of the guitars I have a lot of mids in them. So when I pick this guitar, maybe it's more flatter, so the scooped kind of presets I use really react well with it. And in a way that does speak to how this guitar sounds, because it has the more, I guess, flat EQ response. It's more a blank slate that you can color with the palette of whatever your amp settings are, whatever your presets are. The pickups aren't too high gain, they're not low gain, they're about medium. So it does respond nicely to dynamics if you want. If you want to crank up your amp and really go heavy metal, it works with that too. And the 5-way switch, it does get some pretty nice tones. I don't really use positions 2 and 4 on this, but you can. It's not terrible, it's not bad. Now let's talk about how this guitar plays. I can happily say, as I've played it in, as the materials have aged a little bit, and as it gets a bit worn, this has become basically a guitar that I can pick up and know that it will play pretty well. Not super high tier Ibanez well, but it gets pretty close, especially for what it is. So I can shred on it if I need to, I can riff on it if I need to, because the neck isn't the thinnest, but it's not thick by any means. It's the perfect in between. And I know it'll be in tune. So even though it doesn't have the highest quality wiring, it doesn't have the absolute best sound on the planet, and it doesn't have ultra custom shop quality, it still has pretty dang good quality, pretty dang good playability, and very usable sound. And that's really all you need if you think about it. So if I was gonna play the hardest thing of all time that I could play, I might not reach for this first. But once I practice that part some, I'm confident I could play it on this guitar and it would sound good. As I hit on, the neck is the perfect thickness, especially after playing it in. It's not too thin that your hand will get fatigued. It's not too thick that playing faster stuff feels awkward. It is the perfect compromise for riffing and the occasional shredding. Am I still going to reach for my faster playing Ibanez if I am going to play a shred session and I'm recording? Yeah, probably. If I had to play shred sessions live and I've practiced the parts and I know them, would this be okay? Absolutely. I'm still confident in the neck too, especially because of the finish on it. Maybe it's going to get sticky and glossy over time, but in the past few years, it's held up pretty well. And the tone from everything, as it's aged, the tone has gotten a bit sweeter. It's not quite as harsh, so it's not that brand new guitar kind of tone, if that even matters or makes a difference. It doesn't matter too much in a recording mix, but as you're playing it as a guitarist and you've played lots of guitars for many hours, you can kind of feel or hear the difference a bit. And as a guitar ages over a month, 2 months, a year, a few years, you can start to notice a bit of a difference, and it does start to sound more satisfying to play. This is of course anecdotal. I haven't looked at the frequency spectrum response over the years. I haven't done that. This is just my experience in playing this instrument. So you can of course take this with a grain of salt. Either way, it sounds played in, it feels played in. There's no sharp edges on the frets. The binding, it has this kind of black plastic binding, but it has rounded a bit more. So it's supremely comfortable to play. The stainless steel frets have held up flawlessly as you expect them to. And of course the playability in the high frets has always been more than excellent because of these scoop-aways right here and the satin neck. So what are my overall thoughts? Am I going to keep this guitar? You could probably tell from the positive sentiment of this video that yes, I'm going to keep this guitar. It sounds good in a mix, it's comfortable, it's got that typical super strat shape with the forearm cutaway. It's playable without a doubt. And it stays in tune. The Evertune, of course, is not a magic thing. It's a mechanical system. You've got your spring per string. You adjust it, you tune it. It stays in tune fairly decently. You do have to check the tuning every day or so. If you're playing it heavily, it does drift out of tune a little bit. But when you're recording during the day, it will hold its tuning. If you're a fan of string bends, you do have to set it up into the bend zone where it's basically about to bottom out. So you do get a bit more tension on the strings, but you do get used to that. It's also really nice to set up too, because the same tool that you use to tune the strings, you use for the intonation and the string height, the bridge saddle height. So the Evertune itself, it does feel different than a fixed bridge, than a floating tremolo or a vintage trem, just because of what it is, and it's a useful tool. So with all that in mind, given the cost of this guitar, this has been very useful and very high value instrument, I'd say. It doesn't have the custom shop quality, but it has that usable quality. And it's not low quality or mid quality by any means either. It's getting up there. You can use it to record amazing songs on it. I'll let you know when I record an amazing song. Not saying I'm the best guitarist in the world, but you can record some good stuff with a guitar like this. Which leads me into the next question then. Is this guitar worth buying? Or a guitar like this, is it worth buying? It's true you could get a less expensive Indonesian guitar, but it's also true prices, especially in the recent years, have been going up, just in general in the guitar industry. So this has a lot of good features modern guitarists want. You might be hit or miss on the Evertune bridge, but it has the ebony fretboard, the stainless steel frets. It's got a nice alder body. It's got 24 frets and super nice fret access, locking tuners, all that modern stuff. So I'd say if these are all things you want, and you want a kind of almost middle of the road neck, it feels kind of like almost like an LTD, but it is a bit wider neck like that Ibanez or Fender width. So it's extremely comfortable to play, as I've mentioned. I'd say if you're looking for something like that, you like how this looks and you like the features, I'd say go for it. And maybe you're wondering again about the Evertune, but one of the key things is that, especially when you're hitting the lower strings, if you're down tuning beyond standard tuning, even in drop D, but I use drop C, maybe you want to use drop B or C standard or B standard or even drop A. A nice thing about the Evertune is that it doesn't allow for pitch drift because of the nature of the mechanism. It holds it in tune. So you can really get aggressive with how you're hitting those strings, and you're not going to go sharp. Maybe if that's part of your signature sound to go sharp when you hit the low string hard, maybe a guitar with the Evertune isn't for you and you should look elsewhere. I think Solar does have some fixed bridge stuff too. I try not to look too much because I don't want to be tempted to buy more. But yeah, they have fixed bridge stuff. There's other brands like LTD, they have fixed bridge stuff. Ibanez has fixed bridge stuff, Charvel. But back to the Evertune, I find that especially if you're doing chording with distortion, it'll hold things in tune. It'll cut back on any dissonance from being out of tune. Of course, if you're playing a minor second, it's always going to sound dissonant no matter what bridge system you have. But I think you know what I mean. So overall, in conclusion, would I recommend this guitar? Yes, I would. I've had nothing but positive experiences with it. There are guitars out there where you like them, you like the look of them, and then after playing them extensively, you like them a bit less. And then there are guitars that you like them, you like the look of them, and after playing them extensively, you like them just as much, if not more. And I'm happy to say that this guitar is in the latter category. So there you have it. Was this helpful? Did I cover all the information you were looking for? Do you have any other questions? Let me know down in the comments below. This is YouTube, so let's go ahead and say the YouTube things. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video, print out every frame and mail it. And as always, peace.